All right, today we're going to dive into a pretty big idea. This concept that our modern world is piling on something the author of our source material calls a cumulative load. Let's break down exactly what that means.
So, the text we're breaking down today really kicks off with a question that, hits close to home for a lot of us. In this world that's just completely saturated with technology and all sorts of modern stressors, how much is actually too much for our bodies to handle?
And that brings us to the central idea, this concept they call cumulative load. The author paints this picture of it being a kind of biological balancing act, something our bodies are dealing with every single day. So, what is cumulative load? Well, the main idea is that our bodies don't really care where the stress comes from. It's not like they have different folders for bad sleep and weird chemicals. Nope. The author says to think of it more like a single running tally. All the repair work that needs to get done every single day, from everywhere. And this image, this scale, really drives that idea home, right? On one side, you've got all the stressors piling up, and on the other, all the things that help us recover. The big takeaway here is that our health might just come down to which side of this scale tips at the end of the day.
Okay, so to really get why this matters so much now, the author takes us on a little trip back in time, and it's to show us just how radically our environment, the invisible part of our environment, has changed in a ridiculously short amount of time.
And whoa, this timeline really tells a story, doesn't it? For pretty much all of human history, the background electromagnetic field, or EMF, was basically nothing, zero. But then, look at that jump. From Ben Franklin's kite to the 5G world we live in today, it's just happened in the blink of an eye, historically speaking. Now, what's really wild about this chart is the shape of that curve. It's not this nice, gentle slope, right? For centuries, it's just a flat line. And then, bam, in just the last couple of decades, it shoots almost straight up. This is the visual for that idea of exponential growth. It's not just growing, it's accelerating like crazy. And get this, it's not just about the amount of exposure, it's also about the type. This visual is a fantastic way to think about it. If you think of frequency as waves per second, your heartbeat is about one wave. Simple. But 5G, we're talking millions of waves per second. And 6G is projected to be in the trillions. The point is, our environment isn't just getting louder, it's getting faster and way, way denser.
So how does this actually play out in, your living room? The author calls it the stacking effect. Think about it. You've got your Wi-Fi router humming away, a couple of cell phones, a smart TV, maybe a smart meter on the side of your house, plus all your Bluetooth stuff and the cell tower down the block. The idea here is that even if each one is low, when you stack them all on top of each other, you create this constant overlapping web of exposure.
Okay, so we've painted this picture of a very different, very busy, invisible environment. So now the text pivots to the big question. What does all this actually do to us biologically, if anything? And it zooms right in on our blood. Now, to really follow the argument, you got to understand this key difference. There are two main types of radiation. You've got ionizing radiation, like X-rays. That's high-energy stuff, and it's regulated because it can directly damage DNA. Then you have non-ionizing radiation from things like Wi-Fi and 5G. That's regulated to prevent a different risk, basically heating up your tissues. But the author asks a critical question. Are there other, more subtle effects of non-ionizing radiation that we're missing? And that leads to this hypothesis. The author suggests that this constant, low-level exposure might be interacting with the very systems we all heard so much about during the pandemic. Things like microcirculation, inflammation, and the health of our blood vessels. So, to pull this out of the world of abstract science and make it really human, the author shares a personal story, the very thing that kicked off this whole investigation. So, after having 4 major brain seizures, the author gets an epilepsy diagnosis. And the doctors say the cause is abnormal electrical activity, but with no clear physical trigger. And that's what sparked the big question. What if the cause wasn't internal at all? What if it was external? So they started looking for a pattern. And what they found was that every single one of those seizures happened in places with a high concentration of electromagnetic sources. We're talking computers, Wi-Fi, smart meters, cell phones, all buzzing at the same time. This personal connection, this correlation is what launched the bigger research question for the whole book. Building on this idea of environmental triggers, the source material poses a pretty controversial question. It points out the timing of the citywide 5G rollout in Wuhan in late 2019 and how close that was to the first reports of a new illness. Now, it's really important to be clear here. The author presents this as a correlation in time that they believe is worth investigating, not as a direct claim of cause and effect.
And just to be crystal clear, the text explicitly states its position right here. The argument is not that one specific technology causes one specific disease. Not at all. The central argument, the whole thesis, is that we need to start looking at the cumulative load of all these stressors together, the radiation, the toxins, our diet, our stress, to really understand how they impact our body's ability to stay healthy.
So, given all this, where do we go from here? Well, the final section of the text argues that this isn't about being afraid of technology. It's about being smart and adapting to the world we live in now. And here's one of the most practical tips in the whole thing, and it's just simple physics. It's called the inverse square law. All it really means is that distance is your best friend. As you double your distance from a source, your exposure doesn't get cut in half. It drops by a factor of 4. So just creating a little space is a really powerful tool. And that brings us right back to this image of the scales. The author's final conclusion is pretty straightforward. Since we probably can't get rid of every single modern stressor, our best bet is to work on the other side of this scale. It's all about strengthening our body's own natural resilience. At the end of the day, the message here isn't technology is bad. It's more be wise, seek balance. It's about building ourselves up with good nutrition, movement, and just being aware of our environment so that we can thrive right alongside the amazing technology we've created. And that's where the source leaves us, with a question to chew on. In a world that's more and more full of these invisible stressors, what does building resilience really look like to you?